we've been talking about Orgrimmar and Stormwind getting revamped for years with constant in-game hints, various interviews, but in an interview from just a little while back, Blizzard listed areas like Silvermoon, Northrend, Orgrimmar, and Stormwind and the surrounding areas are the key zones that we are going to revisit. Seeing that we already revisited Silvermoon, we are now going into Northrend. Almost certainly this is a hint for the next expansion, the reset, the supposed reset coming after the saga. So what is Orgrimmar and Stormwind going to look like, and how are they going to develop them over the years? Let's look at everything we currently know. If you're looking for WoW game time or anything MMORPG related, Itemku, this video sponsor, is the perfect digital gaming marketplace with the best deals on the market. They've got everything from game keys to game time to gift cards. Best of all, you can see all the seller ratings, reviews with a bunch of different payment options available, as well as customer support and refund protection so that you can buy without any worries. Make sure to click the link in the description below and get the best prices on Itemku. So we've been talking about these revamps for years because Blizzard has constantly been teasing them, and the reason is because they really are working on revamps. I made these videos like 5 years ago when we data mined some new models and we data mined like underground stuff and quality loss stuff, and they ended up revamping Silvermoon, adding Undermine and actually revamping things. But some 6 months to a year ago they started talking about how well the revamp was actually received and how they plan to continue going down this line. The big idea is that after the World Soul Saga we're going to go to the Eastern Kingdoms and Kandor, but they are going to revamp the old zones, the main ones around Stormwind and Orgrimmar. This is not really speculation because they specifically mention how well Qualtalas was received and how much they are going to learn from the saga. The dev in particular mentioned Thousand Needles as being one of these future iconic zones. However, now this brings us to July 2026, to about 2 weeks ago from this video when we got an interview for Portal Room from Ian Kazikostas, essentially the lead WoW guy, and he continued to talk about this stuff. So far there have been hints that Orgrimmar and Stormwind are going to get revamped with player housing, with some changes to the maps, but the real thing is that they're just so incredibly outdated to what is currently coming in all these expansions, all these new cities. I mean, we can see what they can do to a city like Silvermoon that was stuck in the TBC era until very recently, and it was incredibly outdated. If you remember, you couldn't even fly there, they just masked a lot of areas. But in the recent interview, they talked about how similar stuff was done to Orgrimmar, how they actually had troubles with the Siege of Orgrimmar because how outdated it was when it was built. This is also from an Ian Kazikostas interview from last month, but this one in particular just further doubles down on this. So with the last Titan and our return to Northrend, Blizzard talked about how other iconic locations can be revisited in the future. Specifically, these key areas were mentioned by Ian: Silvermoon, Northrend, Stormwind, Orgrimmar, Westfall, and the Barrens, in that particular order. In fact, the whole quote, what he said, is this: it would really be a shame if in WoW going forward some of the most iconic places in the game, whether it's Silvermoon, Northrend, Stormwind, Orgrimmar, Westfall, Barrens, and others, are places that we can never go again because we already told a story there. Just to say, I think he listed this order in particular. I really don't think this was a coincidence. I mean, Silvermoon already happened, Northrend we're going to learn about in just a month, and the way he listed off the two areas is as if he's hinting at 14.0 content, the expansion after the World Soul Saga, which, by the way, based on that decent incredible leak, is already planned for 2029. So essentially Orgrimmar and the Barrens and Westfall, the capitals, and the surrounding areas. In fact, this could be a hint for the expansion and what we could expect to see in the expansion after. There has always been this talk about how the saga is going to end like this craziness, this universe-destroying, scheming villain era, and that we're going to go back to like a reset, to a classic-like world where we are just kind of adventuring around the continent. I mean, realistically, there wouldn't be any better way to start this than our main Horde and Alliance capitals. The story would, of course, be super hard to predict, but these two could legit be the biggest revamps we had ever seen. I mean, it's important to note that Orgrimmar and Stormwind lore-wise are the biggest and the most robust cities in the game. I mean, Stormwind by all accounts should be even bigger. It is said that the population is in the millions. It's obviously much older, but it was destroyed during the Orcish Wars. However, realistically, the game really doesn't do Stormwind any justice. I mean, it's not terrible. Some parts have been updated over the years. The harbor, for example, is robust. The keep, but it's just incredibly outdated. In my opinion though, Orgrimmar is a much worse offender than Stormwind. Orgrimmar was built relatively recently when Troll decided to settle in Durotar, but then it was completely changed when Garrosh took over during the Cataclysm, and he turned the city into like this metal fortress. Since then, Garrosh has been gone for over a decade, in fact like 2 decades with the time skip, and the time of the new expansion, so I'm guessing Orgrimmar should have actually changed significantly since then. Furthermore, the Orgrimmar Harbor is like the biggest joke in the game. It's like a fisherman's port, or around the same size as a fisherman's port. If you remember during the War Within with the Earthen, there was actually a big hint of an Orgrimmar revamp when the Earthen talked about how they can use their excavation skills to expand the port as well as the hills surrounding Orgrimmar. So this was the first biggest legit in-game hint, like this was not some forum post of some random guy. Then we had Blizzard in interviews, and then we got Ian Hazikosta's listing Orgrimmar and Stormwind in a particular order as if it's happening after the saga. Based on this, I don't think we are talking about just revamping, just updating assets that we currently have with like new buildings like they did with the destroyed portion from Cataclysm with Stormwind. I think it's very likely that the expansion after the World Soul Saga is going to be like Midnight, but for our main Horde and Alliance areas. In fact, they may just redo the entirety of Durotar and the Barrens together with Orgrimmar, and we may be seeing Stormwind redone, completed with Elven Forest and Westfall. Based on how long the cities have been established, I think they're going to be significantly expanded as well. I mean, Orgrimmar might as well just spread into the Barrens already at this point, and we may be seeing new quarters from the new playable races that we had gotten over the years. Definitely a new harbor, potentially underground facilities in the hills surrounding Orgrimmar. In terms of Stormwind, new quarters are likely as well, but personally I think we're talking about just making the city more majestic and robust to really match the capital of the whole continent, like of the entire alliance, like the jewel of the entire alliance. I think that it's just going to make it significantly bigger and give you a feel like you're in one of the largest cities on the whole of Azeroth. Furthermore, I think the surrounding camps and alliance and horde bases are going to get revamped as well. I think they're going to be much more than what they currently are. I don't think Crossroads is going to be an inn with a few tents, but probably a decently large base, potentially a town. Same could be said for Goldshire. I mean, Goldshire in the game is not only a meme, but it is also one inn with a forge outside and a couple of fences. In the lore, this is actually a decently sized town outside of Stormwind. It's not just a few buildings. We are very likely going to see this as an actual town, which in my opinion is going to be as exciting as the revamp of the capital as well. I think they're really planning to just go all in on Durotar, Elven, Westfall, Barrens. I think we could in fact be seeing the whole expansion based around these areas and the capitals, and the only thing is, I can't imagine what is going to be happening around these areas to warrant like a whole expansion, unless we're looking at like faction conflict again, or some new threat arises after the saga is over, or some sort of cataclysm event is happening. We might actually learn something on this year's BlizzCon, but overall, exciting times are ahead. Thanks for watching. Check out a crazy Lightstar Gyarados leak that could turn out to be very interesting by clicking on the screen. And also subscribe to my brand new Witcher Lore channel by clicking on the screen as well. See you next time.